You picture it clearly: acres of quiet metal and old engines, a fenced kingdom where broken cars become steady cash every single week. No corporate ladder, no cubicle, just a crane, a scale, and a phone that rings with people begging to sell their dead cars. Crush a few wrecks, sell a few parts, and watch the money roll in while other people work regular, exhausting 9-to-5 jobs. That is the rugged dream reality shows and online forums sell you, the salvage yard as an easy blue-collar path to riches. Here is what almost nobody tells you before you buy that fenced lot full of rusting metal and quiet, patient future possibility. Owning a junkyard was never really about simply crushing old cars and hauling away scrap metal for a quick and easy dollar. It was about mastering a brutal math problem where every single vehicle you buy is a bet you might completely lose money. Start with the number that actually runs this entire business: the vehicle acquisition cost, what you pay before selling a single part. In one detailed financial model, vehicle acquisition cost sits near 120% of revenue in early years of the business. That means many yards are quietly spending more to acquire a car than that same car will ever generate back in sales. Cutting acquisition costs down to 100% of revenue can boost your gross profit margin by roughly 2 full percentage points. That small percentage shift can be the entire difference between a struggling yard and a genuinely profitable one over several hard years. Used auto parts themselves carry strong markups, often ranging between 50 and 70% above what the yard originally paid for them. Scrap metal tells a completely different story, with margins that can swing anywhere between 20 and 70%, depending on the metal. Copper is the real prize sitting inside every wrecked car, with bare bright copper scrap yielding profit margins as high as 85%. Brass and lead scrap trail slightly behind, typically earning recyclers profit margins somewhere between 73 and 75% per pound. In early 2026, scrap car prices nationally track between $120 and $200 per ton of metal. Most individual scrap vehicles sell for somewhere between $100 and $600 depending on weight, condition, and regional buyer demand. Roughly 12 million vehicles are retired across the country every single year, feeding a constant, predictable stream into salvage yards nationwide daily. Nearly 96% of each retired vehicle can eventually be recycled or reused, which sounds efficient until you see the labor involved. So what is the actual trap hiding underneath the rugged, dusty photos of crushed cars and stacked engines in the sales brochure? The trap is that a junkyard is not one simple business. It is 3 separate businesses stitched together under one dusty roof. You are simultaneously running a parts retailer, a scrap commodities trader, and an environmental cleanup crew, often with the exact same small staff. A single leaking fuel tank or forgotten battery can trigger environmental fines that quietly erase months of careful, hard-earned profit margins. Inventory management becomes a constant nightmare, because every car holds different parts worth wildly different amounts depending on make, model, and year. Consider Donald Flynn, a former waste management executive who looked at the fragmented junkyard industry and saw something nobody else could see. In 1998, Flynn founded LKQ Corporation, aiming to consolidate scattered salvage yards the same way waste management consolidated garbage hauling. At the time, the used auto parts industry was worth roughly $8 billion, spread thin across more than 11,000 independent junkyards. Most of those individual junkyards lacked modern inventory systems, computers, or any real way to know what parts they actually had in stock. Flynn's first move was acquiring 3 small salvage businesses, including Triplet Auto Recyclers, a family operation that had run for 50 years. He did not chase the biggest yards, he chased the best-run ones, betting that consistency would matter more than raw size alone. By 2003, LKQ operated 38 recycling facilities and went public, raising $91 million to fund further expansion. LKQ then completed roughly 300 acquisitions over the following decades, slowly consolidating a chaotic industry into one organized national operation entirely. In 2009, LKQ bought Greenleaf Auto Recyclers from Ford Motor Company, removing its largest remaining domestic competitor in a single deal. By early 2026, LKQ Corporation carried a market capitalization of approximately $8 billion, built entirely from consolidated junkyards nationwide. Flynn did not get rich crushing a single car, he got rich buying hundreds of small operators too tired to keep competing alone. So who actually gets rich from the junkyard you are dreaming about buying this year with your hard-earned personal savings account? The scrap buyer gets rich first, setting the price per ton and quietly adjusting it whenever global steel and copper demand shifts. The insurance company gets rich next, charging steep premiums for environmental liability coverage that a fenced lot full of fluids always requires. The towing and hauling companies get rich charging you fees every single time a wrecked vehicle needs to physically reach your lot. The equipment lenders get rich financing your crane, your crusher, and your forklifts, collecting interest whether your yard is busy or slow. The city government gets rich through permits, zoning fees, and environmental inspections that never stop no matter how thin your margins get. And large consolidators like LKQ get rich because they can buy scrap and parts at volume prices no small yard ever reaches. The small independent junkyard owner, meanwhile, often works dawn to dusk just to protect margins that keep shrinking every single passing year. This is the quiet architecture of junkyard wealth, where fees, financing, and volume pricing flow toward the biggest player in the game. The junkyard itself was never really about crushed metal or dead engines rusting quietly in rows across a dusty gravel lot outside. It was about who controls pricing, volume, and financing in an industry that looks simple but runs on brutal, invisible economics underneath. So should you actually buy a junkyard this year, or is this simply another rugged, romanticized trap dressed up as easy money? The optimist case looks like this: you buy low, source vehicles cheaply, sell parts fast, and steadily build a loyal repeat customer base. Your vehicle acquisition cost falls year over year as you get better at spotting valuable cars before your competitors even notice them. The realist case looks messier. Some cars are total losses, scrap prices dip suddenly, and your margins swing wildly from month to month. You still profit, but slower than expected, and much of your early capital goes toward permits, insurance, and expensive heavy equipment costs. The worst case looks like this: an environmental violation hits right after a scrap price crash, and your cash reserves disappear almost instantly. You sell the lot at a steep discount just to escape cleanup costs that no insurance policy completely covered in time. A well-managed urban junkyard can report annual profits between 10 and 20% of total revenue in a strong, active market. That can translate into $50,000 to $200,000 a year, depending heavily on location, volume, and service diversity offered. That range sounds appealing until you remember the labor, the liability, and the constant physical wear of running a heavy industrial site. Fixed operating costs in one detailed model reached over $172,000 annually before a single car was even sold. Scaling from 3,000 parts sold to 14,000 parts sold is often what separates a struggling yard from a genuinely thriving one. That kind of scaling usually requires growing staff from roughly 45 employees towards 75 employees over several demanding growth years. This does not mean junkyards are worthless investments. It means they reward operational discipline far more than romantic dreams of easy scrap money. The people who win long-term rarely stay small forever. They consolidate, add locations, and slowly build something closer to LKQ's model. Scale changes everything in this industry because bulk vehicle purchasing and bulk scrap selling both unlock pricing that small yards never see. One slow month barely dents a large multi-location operator, while that same slow month can sink a single small independent yard. This is why consolidators keep buying small yards while individual owners keep quietly selling out and walking away from the business entirely. The math does not lie, even when reality shows make crushing cars look like effortless, glamorous blue-collar entertainment on late-night television. If you do decide to buy a yard, treat the first year as a brutal education, not as guaranteed, comfortable passive income. Study your local scrap pricing trends, your environmental compliance costs, and your realistic vehicle acquisition costs before signing any purchase agreement blindly. Talk to current owners in your region, not just brokers who profit the moment your signature finally lands on the closing paperwork. Underwrite conservatively, assume higher compliance costs than advertised, and never assume scrap prices will simply bail out a mediocre purchase decision later. The junkyard was never really about the cars sitting quietly in rows. It was about who understood the pricing chain underneath them. It was about the real difference between someone who controls volume and someone who merely owns a dusty lot full of liability. Real wealth in the salvage industry rarely looks like the rugged photos. It looks like spreadsheets, compliance binders, and patient consolidation deals. The silent millionaires in this space are not the loud characters yelling on reality television. They are quiet, methodical operators instead entirely. They are the ones who tracked copper prices, permit renewals, and acquisition costs long before anyone else even noticed the pattern forming. They understood something simple, that a junkyard is not passive scrap money, it is an active commodities and logistics business wearing overalls. That rugged costume is fun to watch on television, but underneath it sits environmental liability, tight financing, and relentless daily inventory work. This pattern, hidden wealth dressed as simple grit, repeats across almost every gritty industry people believe will make them rich quickly today. It shows up in tow yards, scrap metal depots, demolition companies, and pawn shops, wherever a rugged image hides careful financial engineering. The real money almost never sits with the person crushing the car, it sits one layer above, with whoever controls the pricing. And that is the pattern this channel keeps returning to, again and again, the silent truth hiding behind every loud, rugged financial dream. If Junkyard's taught you anything today, let it be this simple lesson. Look past the crusher and study the actual pricing chain. Because somewhere behind every scrap check you will ever collect, someone else already quietly built the system that profits before you do. That is the real lesson of the silent millionaire. Wealth always prefers structure, scale, and patience over grit, sweat, and easy promises. Next time someone romanticizes junkyard money, remember Donald Flynn's spreadsheet full of quiet acquisitions, not a single crushed car on a lot. His empire came from patient consolidation and structure, not from personally crushing cars in a dusty yard somewhere outside Chicago, Illinois today. Somewhere right now, a quiet operator is buying up small failing yards nobody notices, while someone else opens one flashy lot alone. That quiet consolidator will very likely still own salvage operations in 20 years, while the flashy single yard owner has already sold out. This is not a reason to avoid the salvage business entirely. It is a reason to approach it with humility, math, and patience. The junkyard can absolutely build real wealth, but only for people willing to treat it like a logistics business, not a hobby. Every number in this video came from real industry data, real transactions, and real companies that actually built lasting salvage fortunes over decades. Donald Flynn started with 3 small acquisitions and built one of the largest auto parts distributors in all of North America today. You do not need his exact scale to benefit from his lesson. Structure and patience beat grit in nearly every salvage business cycle. The next time someone shows you a rugged junkyard online, ask who actually controls pricing first before you ever ask about the crusher. Ask about environmental liability, vehicle acquisition costs, and realistic scrap pricing before you ask about the size of the crane or forklift. The silent millionaires already asked those boring, unglamorous questions years ago, quietly, without an audience, long before they ever became wealthy from scrap. That is exactly why they are wealthy, and why so many louder, more excited buyers are still chasing their very first profitable year. None of this requires toughness alone. It simply requires patience, honest math, and the discipline to track every single acquisition cost carefully. Most people quit the salvage business, not because scrap prices failed them, but because the paperwork never matched the rugged dream they imagined. Wealth built on salvage consistently rewards structure over sweat, patience over toughness, and boring compliance binders over flashy crushed car photographs online. The dream of the junkyard is not entirely fake. It is simply incomplete, missing every hidden cost hiding quietly beneath the metal. Fill in those missing costs honestly, and the dream slowly becomes a real, achievable business instead of an expensive, disappointing financial lesson. Every silent fortune in salvage was built the exact same quiet way, one honest acquisition number, one careful deal at a time. Junkyards, tow yards, demolition companies, and pawn shops, the packaging always changes, but the underlying architecture of who profits first stays remarkably identical. Understand that hidden architecture just once, and you will start seeing it everywhere else that money quietly moves, far beyond salvage itself. That is the real education hiding inside every junkyard story, far more valuable than any single scrap check you could ever collect. Because once you finally see who controls pricing first, you can decide, with clear eyes wide open, whether you want to play this game. And if you do choose to play it exactly like Donald Flynn, with patience, structure, and total contempt for the easy dream. The silent millionaire is never the loudest voice on the lot. They are simply the last quiet operator still standing after the cycle turns. Subscribe if you want more stories exactly like this one, where we quietly take apart the loud dreams that everyone else keeps selling. Because the real money was never inside the crushed car everyone loves to photograph, it was always hiding in the pricing chain nobody discusses. And that pattern, hidden in plain sight the entire time, is exactly where this channel will keep looking for the very next silent fortune.